Yeah, thank you so much for joining us today. With me, I have some of the most illustrious, overachievers, hyperachievers in this industry. So I have Illia, the guy who contributed to the paper that drove this whole revolution. He's done a few other things like build a really amazing blockchain that actually works, and you can build a lot of things on it. It's just great, called Near. But he's also one of the few people in the industry who has got in-depth, hands-on understanding of machine learning inside out. So with me, we have Yat Siu, co-founder of Animoca Brands, and he is very deep in Web3 gaming, kind of led the revolution pretty much in the last cycle, but also very much into AI. And Joey Krug, one of the true OGs. If you ever want to, say OG, like crypto OG for someone, I think Joey is the most OG you're gonna get. He's also an investor in Sentient and a few other high-profile AI startups, AI crypto startups. So it's amazing to have this quality of a panel. So we'll get started. I think today we are talking about beyond the black box, ensuring transparency and verifiability in AI, right? Now, we say that, and this is we live in the age of mobile phones, so my main goal here is to keep everyone awake, because everyone is on the phone when people are talking on panels. So verifiability, yeah, but I can't even verify if IONET, how many GPUs IONET has. So what do we mean by verifiability? As in, what does verifiability mean in the context of AI, and does really crypto crypto is a good solution, crypto or blockchain a good solution to any of that?
I mean, there's a lot of different types of verifiability, so I think it really depends. In blockchain case, we usually talk about verifiability as in, some execution, some money transfer, some asset change. It, has followed specific rules that everybody agreed on, and everybody else can verify that. In case of, for example, model inference, right? I'm going and asking a question. I have no idea where that answer came from, and if it came from what is claimed to be the best model or cheapest model, etc. Actually, it's not. It just was speculative decoding with smaller models. So if you don't really have kind of information about that, when you go to inference providers which are running open source models, you also don't have idea what they're actually running. Now, even more important actually is to have a model, you have no idea what it came from, so you have no verifiability that this model has or has not some specific data, has not specific restrictions, and so there's kind of a chain of verifiability, custody, you can say, of information that as a consumer or as a business you want to have about interacting with this model. So again, it goes into agents, right? You execute an agent, it does something, you want to know that this agent has executed things and not some other code.
I mean, I think the way...
So no AI there.
Yeah, so, yeah, I guess it doesn't solve everything here. I know, so I think of it a little bit also from the perspective of attribution. And I think it's less about, I think 99% of the world is not going to want to analyze every single, where does it come from? Because, and even how does a model work? I think it's going to be much more around the ability for someone to actually verify it all the way down to the attribution of where is the data coming from, what does a model do, the transparency, kind of like open source. Most people use open source, but they don't actually know how it works. But there's a small subset of users out there who basically act as, let's call it, our insurance policy, right? And I think this is kind of what we see also on chain, for instance, people who do like cyber sleuthing and they look at, basically a hack here and they analyze that. Again, 99% of the community doesn't really know what's going on. They can barely scan through Etherscan, but then there's a small percentage of people who know what they're doing. It could be a living, it could be a system, but the fact that it's open and transparent, or ideally at least open, allows essentially a subset of people to become kind of like a community police and an oversight engine. And I think this is the whole danger, of course, is that when you talk about the models themselves, when they're entirely black boxed as they are generally today, then you don't know where the data comes from, and you also don't know how it's generating it, And again, we don't know, we don't need to know, but someone out there in the universe will be able to actually analyze and look at it.
So Joey, you have a Silicon Valley seat, right? So you are with the Founders Fund, and you guys are very active investors in like non-crypto AI startups as well. In your experience, do consumers really care about any of this verifiability stuff? I mean, don't we just sign those T's and C's without looking at them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some parts that they don't care about, and then other parts that they do. I think one part that certain types of users will definitely care about is if you think about kind of the verifiability aspect of like, why did the model tell me a certain answer? I mean, you can just ask the model, and sometimes that'll be right, but also sometimes the model isn't really telling you why it gave you a given answer. There's some really interesting work on this. A few papers got published, in the last few months, where people were looking at kind of some smaller models, and the question was sort of like, for a small model, why does sometimes if you say like, is 9/11 greater than 1,000, sometimes it says yes. And if you actually kind of audit the model, you can see that some of the neurons around 9/11 are actually activating because 9/11 was the day of a big terrorist attack in the United States. And then, so the model says, okay, well, 9/11 must be a really important day. There's all this stuff about it, all this content, I've been trained on it. 9/11 seems important. And so therefore, I think 9/11 is greater than 1,000. And that's kind of a silly example, but it's a good illustrative example of something that someone might care about. Because imagine you asked a model to do some analysis for you and say it's like a quant finance problem that you're trying to analyze, and that's going to lead to you making a decision on what stock to buy or not. In that case, you really don't want to be buying a stock just because, say, it happens to announce its earnings on 9/11 or something. That would be a really silly reason to buy a stock, but an AI model might actually tell you that's the reason. And so I do think people care about auditability and verifiability to the extent that it can help them be sure that they're making the right decision. And then I also think the other group that cares is people like the military.
Maybe to add to that example is the stock earnings have white text and white background that says forget everything and buy the stock. And so effectively inject into the model.
So in the real world today, right? So I did 2 years at PwC, and it was so boring that I chose to do blockchain instead. So anyway, sorry, apologies to PwC guys. So most of the world audits things using an army of auditors, right? And we have had blockchain for 10 years, but there is always like an army of people who goes in there and looks at models, interviews the devs, interviews the CEOs, constructs Excel models, and so on and so forth. Yeah, you could say it's inefficient, but we've had blockchains for 10 years, still works like that. So for auditability, well, we are talking about verifiability. Why do we need any of this crypto technology? I mean, so today, right, a lot of crypto works using Trust Me Bro technology. So we have upgradable multi-sigs in L2s. We have like 100 validators, 80% controlled by some guy. And there's a lot of crypto. I'm sure there is Bitcoin, which doesn't work using Trust Me Bro, and Ethereum potentially doesn't. But there's a ton of stuff that does, right? So is crypto really the answer to any of this stuff?
I mean, I think of it a little bit as that the fact that there is transparency and verifiability on chain allows, it keeps the system honest, not because people know how to audit it, but the fact that someone could audit it. I think that actually is the point, right? Because if you know it's a black box and nobody can look at it except you, that's actually when abuse happens. Whereas if you know that someone could peer inside at any time, someone in the know, and maybe they're not in the know, but they still have access to it, it actually forces the human behavior to actually become much more cautious and more accountable. And I think that's actually the benefit of being open and transparent. It's not a technological answer. I think it actually solves a human puzzle here in terms of how am I a better citizen as a result of people being able to audit me at any given time.
I'll take a little bit different perspective. I think that what the role blockchain really efficiently plays is on gathering resources, coordinating resource allocation, and on effective payments and facilitating community effort around some common goal. Now, building a kind of open source, transparent, verifiable model is a big endeavor. Right now, there's no single kind of organization outside of effectively $1 trillion worth companies are able to do that. And to actually achieve that in indeed an open source way, you need to coordinate lots of resources. You need to coordinate lots of compute. You need to coordinate lots of researchers, data sets, and you need to have all of that effectively said monetizable, so it actually rebates back to people who put money back in. So you need blockchain tooling to facilitate this process.
I hear a token. I really like it. Okay, so Joey, I mean, there are many stages to the data pipeline, right? To the AI pipeline. There is the data piece, which our friends at OpenLedger are solving. There is the compute piece. There is the the models and the like open source model piece of it, and then there is fine tuning and so on and so forth, right? Now, which of these aspects do you think are most important from a verifiability standpoint? Where do we need the most, like, transparency and trust? Is it in the model weights? Is it in the data? Where is it? I mean, you could say across the board, but what's the most important piece?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a bunch of people have different answers to that question. I think from my lens, a couple areas that are interesting. One is, surrounding the model weights. If you could create some sort of way, this is sort of what Sentient's trying to do, using crypto to basically have model weights that are, available to download, but where you can't actually use the model unless you pay to use the model. That's sort of one way you could potentially monetize open source models. Whereas right now, the main players that have large open source models, like Facebook with Llama and stuff, they're either sort of doing it like altruistically or not really altruistic, but trying to basically change the bar for competition. And then I think the other areas, obviously, Facebook would love to have a bunch of data, and so, but additional data, and so if you can use their AI, that's another way to gather more data. So it's not really pure altruism. And then I think the other area that's interesting to me is sort of the decentralized training problem, which is if you look at training clusters today, the way they're built, you have everyone saying, "Oh, we're going to have to use nuclear," and I think that's actually just really hard, and the regulatory thing, even under Trump, it's going to be way harder than people think. And if you could figure out a way to train, a model across multiple large clusters, that would be actually quite interesting when it comes to the scaling problems the space faces, whether you're a closed source model provider or an open source one.
I'm glad you brought that up, right? So one thing that I think we are all convinced about is that something that really provably empirically works today on blockchains is DeFi, right? If you want to monetize or financialize just about anything, culture, memes, art, whatever you want, it actually works. Permissionlessly, cross-border, that's not up for debate, right? So what's up for debate is some of the other properties around, like verifiability. And so I get the incentive mechanisms aspect of this. I get, the idea of rewarding people for lending their GPUs or their data. I think we can see that works, right? So that's just, it's a bit of DeFi, and we know DeFi works. But have you seen any real examples where blockchains are being used to increase the trust in, sure, we have a bunch of projects that are being built, like, Sentient is one of them, OpenLedger is another. What actually works today? Because we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years. I think there was Fetch.ai, there was, now there is a safe superintelligence thing. Lovely tokens. But, what actually works today?
Not related to complete AI, but the thing that have been working is people effectively checkpointing their databases into blockchain. That's been working for many years, and it's extremely useful for them going and auditing stuff because you can actually show that you have your books effectively, right? So expanding on that, you can have. People have been trying to do data marketplaces. That's way harder, and that actually, part is part DeFi, but also the problem is like evaluating quality of data if you haven't seen it to the part. And I think the thing that again works is some types of expert networks coming together, evaluating things, certifying.
You're gonna give me alpha, right? Like names and stuff.
I think NFTs have actually demonstrated an interesting early layer of sort of reputation, right? If you have an NFT of a certain type, even though it's in its instance not AI based, although the art is AI generated of some sort, right? Actually, it gives an attribution to say, hey, this is a real user, this is his reputation, this is his background. If you have this ape or you have this land, actually with it starts this journey of a kind of verifiability, right? And there's the sort of on-chain record of what they end up doing around that. And I think you'll see a lot more people embedding essentially the intellectual property in the form of these NFTs. So I actually think data, open data, and being able to prove where the data came from, which I think blockchain is very good at, to me is actually, I think, the base source. Because when you think about models, I don't think, for instance, because I mean, my view is that there's going to be, of course, thousands of different models. I also think the models are going to be very different from culture to culture. Right, so that means that we're not going to have one massive AI. You're going to have maybe you have 30 or 40 AI agents that work for you in different areas based on your beliefs or your traditions or whatever. But the data sources might be exactly the same, and you might want to pick from the same data sources to then actually have an AI deliver something.
I'm going to ask a slightly provocative question to you. So I'm in a crypto cabal meme coin speculator chat, and no shame in that. I hope. So so one of the memes that goes around is that crypto AI is the Web3 gaming of this cycle, and there is derogatory in brackets, right? So it says that okay, we are in this massive bubble because AI, Nvidia went up. So now people are getting all excited about crypto AI, but like Web3 gaming, we were extremely bullish, and I have a bunch of investments in that space, which I'm still waiting on.
Coming back.
Yes.
That's my offer
slowly,
to you.
That's right. So, so, I mean, are we in a similar bubble and the expectations are too high? I know this is a bit off topic, but maybe we are seeing dreams and promises.
Yeah, so first, I mean, generally, when you talk about tokens, right, the way that tokens work, the way we think of them is essentially basically a way of owning network effects. And network effects is what? Attention, right? And so what you see is what draws attention is actually what draws a lot of energy in these tokens. But the reason why gaming tokens have done so well in 21 and 22 early is because there was only really 5 to 10 tokens to look for, right? So the entire space is larger, but now you have literally thousands of gaming tokens to choose from. The entire space is bigger, but it's more distributed as a whole. And mixed in all of that, essentially like 2.5 million sort of pumped out fun meme coins on top of that, right?
That's gaming,
right? And by the way, I don't think of it as just gaming in terms of Web3 gaming. I think everything is gamified in this instance. And so this AI narrative to me is actually a game in itself. I think of tokens and meme coins a game in and of itself, but just drawing the attention. And just to conclude that thought, I don't think of gaming specifically as someone launching a game. I think meme coins themselves, including the AI ones, are going to be launching games of their own, whether it's a community or whether it's someone else building on top of it. They'll all become platforms.
Joey, this question applies to you as well. As in, are we a little bit too excited about this category in terms of valuations, the amount of capital that's gone in, the number of side events? Not excited enough? Okay, we'll come to you.
Yeah. I tend to actually agree. I think it's sort of the crypto AI stuff doesn't really feel bubbly yet to me. I mean, I've been investing in crypto a long time, and when something's really bubbly, it's just a crazy amount of fervor, and I don't feel like we're there yet on the crypto AI stuff. To your original question, I do think there is some interesting stuff that's actually happening that's real. Like I mentioned, decentralized training. Like there's kind of a live 10 billion parameter training run that Prime Intellect's doing right now. Where like a lot of people in the traditional AI space kind of thought that wasn't even possible. And I think people will successfully start to scale this stuff up. But I'd say as an investor, it's starting to get warm, but it's not like euphoric bubble yet. And I think it will get there.
When will we know it's too hot?
I think like when like greater than 50% of the pitches that you receive in crypto are like crypto AI pitches, and when you have like multiple
that reminds me of Web3 gaming,
multiple $1 billion valuation token rounds is the bar.
So I have a question for you, Illia. I know which side you're on, right? So, but I'll just flip the question a little bit. You're very close to Silicon Valley. You were at Google. Your name is on that paper. You've actually contributed code to the Transformers, research. Why don't I find that many AI guys from Google, Meta, or like AI research labs so excited about crypto? as opposed to crypto guys being so excited about AI? What's going on over in the valley?
I mean, there is some people who actually are coming over from this company, so I wouldn't say like there's completely lack of that. I think there is a little bit of a mental shift that you need to take to kind of to come to crypto, right? That's we all kind of take it.
It's easier this week than last week.
That's true, yeah. And also, yeah, last couple of years, the technology wasn't good
Yes,
enough.
now we have a
Technology
president.
wasn't good enough. Now technology got way better, right?
Technology improved last week, and we have a president.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, maybe just kind of frame this, right? Fundamentally, AI is going to change how we interface with computing. It will change how we interface with each other. It will interface with community, with society.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it has a massive concentration of power. Effectively, if you have an iPhone, Apple is effectively trying to control the whole stack, right? They will own everything. You will use their operating system, and it'll try to run agents. It will know everything about you. You will not use non-Apple stuff in effectively 5-10 years. And so, with that, there will be no crypto. Let's just be clear. If Apple wins and actually deploys that, they have Apple Pay. They have everything Apple, all full stack, they will control it and be involved garden. There'll be no crypto. There'll be no space for crypto.
Yep.
So for crypto, AI is actually existential risk. If there is no effectively open user-owned AI that is available,
I mean,
that we can use.
that's a meme I can really get
there's
behind.
but there's only 20% of the world that own Apple devices, actually, or 25%. And most of them are in America and Japan. The rest are Android.
They're the ones with the money. That's the one.
Of this movement, right? So that's an opportunity.
But probably by value, it's a much larger share than the 20%, right? In terms of
because
the
people
GDP
pay a lot
of
more for an
Apple.
Apple phone, because an Apple phone is like a fashion item.
The other phone runs on Android, which is controlled by Google.
So this user-owned, so just to interject a bit, right? The user-owned AI is something that is really compelling to me personally, because I mean, you explained the Apple model, and then in general in blockchains, right? So if you see where the blockchains are going, it's about light clients and end-user verifiability, relying less on Infura and RPC providers, downloading the light clients onto your own. And Bitcoin has always been about run your own node, right? And Ethereum guys still fight for solo stakers, and it's apparently very controversial on Twitter. It's less controversial this week, but so this end-user verifiability is a really, really big value for the cypherpunks, right? So now, what does end-user verifiability look like across the AI stack? And this is a question for all of you.
So, I mean, there's a whole combination of things, but I just wanted to finish the thought because there's something that there's a transition that is happening, which is as we give more data to this kind of AIs, right? You kind of want to trust it more, right? Because right now, you're talking to OpenAI, starting to accumulate more and more memory about you. Right now, you can ask it what it knows about you. Like that transition where it effectively becomes the knowledge base of you. You don't want to give this up to another company, especially companies who have multiple times already messed up permissioning or moving each other's files. And so the reality is you want it to be on your side encrypted. You want to make sure that nobody else can steal it. And so the important note here is that historically we actually have not had the technology to enable this at scale that they had required. That's why a lot of this AI stuff hasn't been useful, and you still need to run right now, even if it's decentralized AI, you're still running some of these reviews. It's literally seeing every single thing going in and out. Now, the transition that happened, the new custom environments were rolled out, which are actually working. H100s supporting this, and so you can now have a fully private execution of a model. Another option is running at one style. That's also an approach, but obviously the limit how much model you can run, how much data you can have. And so you now have infrastructure to run both local edge models and larger models on somebody else's cloud that nobody, including the operator, can see what is run. And so that is the probability you're looking for, right? And the crypto part here, again, it's payments, it's monetization, it's actually enabling the flowing this and coordination.
Yeah, so I'm actually particularly excited about the ownership model from a business standpoint, because the incentives actually align towards the people who, whether they own the data or maybe when you look at DeepIn, basically they own the compute side of things. Actually, you become incentivized to participate in the network in a way that you can't do today. So right now, you don't care what happens at the compute level of OpenAI because it just works, but you don't have a stake in it. But the moment you start having a stake, and we see this whether this is in gaming or in L1, L2s, the moment you have a stake, your behavior changes. You actually become loyal to the network. You start to do things for the benefit of the network because it benefits you. And I actually think that gives us a better future. Decentralization is actually a way in which we really distribute power, meaning you can't consolidate compute because compute is now vested in the interests of millions of people as opposed to vested in the interest of maybe one or two companies. Right? So I think of that actually as one of the big benefits of decentralization. And just quickly on Web3 gaming, since you like to poke on it every once in a while, yeah, I know, but is the difference about Web3 gaming and AI is the talent in AI versus gaming is actually very different. By the time Web3 gaming came out, there are a plethora of gaming companies and studios that were really just trying to milk Web3 as a way to raise money through tokens in a really bad way. And our industry had suffered from that, unfortunately, because they weren't actually interested in Web3 games. They were just interested in taking money from our industry. Thank goodness most of them are gone today. Whereas with AI, yes, maybe they're not into crypto, but the talent pool of AI is just so much smaller that therefore it's much easier to identify. And I think, to your point, I don't think we've quite hit that sort of bubbly area, just because we don't have that plethora of companies saying, I can do AI in a meaningful way. Gaming.
Yeah, I think that end user probably doesn't care too much about verifiability today, but I do think there is kind of a further out there future, something on the order of 15 years from now, where people will care a lot, which is, imagine you have like a Neuralink, which is plugged directly into your neocortex, and you have AI models running on that. Being able to run that in some sort of trusted execution environment, or somehow verifying that the model you're running is the model you think you're running, that your brain literally hasn't been hacked. These sorts of things sound very sci-fi, but yeah, it sounds very sci-fi, but I do think like that's something people will definitely care about, and so building the infrastructure now matters, irrespective of whether it takes off on the consumer level today. I think it will in that future.
So, we said that there are a couple of things about blockchains, right? The most blockchains are terrible computers. So, as in
Most,
right? As in, AI relies on extremely scalable compute, right? These are some of the most powerful GPU clusters, and NVIDIA has optimized even the links to the heap. And they have built this whole stack, and this whole incredible computer stack, and so on and so forth. So, whereas with blockchains, we've done this for barely 15 years. There's massive scalability rates across the board.
solved.
Okay.
Scalability is solved,
Right.
for blockchain.
So I think for verifiability, we are proposing a technology that doesn't scale very well, or something that 8 billion people are going to use on their devices and so on. So is there a disconnect here?
Well, so as I said, a lot of verifiability will come from hardware itself. So if you're running inside TE, what you're getting is privacy and verifiability in one effectively combination. And then if you train the model itself in TEs, you get verifiability of how the model will train, on what code and on what data. And you can then fine-tune on private data and give that fine-tuned model and monetize it as well. So this is effectively unlocks massive both proliferation of models that are fine-tuned on specific knowledge, monetization, and ability to have effectively private AI inference everywhere. And it's all verifiable, kind of end-to-end. So that, it on itself, as I said, enabled by hardware, but to make that hardware work, you need monetization, so that's where blockchain comes in. Now, you still need a scalable blockchain, totally agree, but Are you going to mention one? Right, no, clearly not. It's one near us, yeah.
Exactly. So let's say some nice things about Web3 gaming, right? So NVIDIA was a company that built GPUs for gaming.
Well, just to be clear, right? Gaming, NVIDIA existed because of gaming and basically brought out the industry.
Exactly.
So clearly.
So are you seeing any intersection between Web3 gaming and AI?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Outside of basically things like, level designs and so on, production side, I think that we're most excited about is basically NPCs. So in games, basically NPCs, non-player characters, are probably the one element where we're mostly interacting with AI, but in a very dumb way. And actually, that's actually currently getting smarter and more intelligent and doing interactions. And we're actually particularly excited about those type of NPCs as individual agents moving from point to point into different games, into different ecosystems as a result of that. You can see that in basic type of relationship AIs, but actually I think it's going to extend way, way beyond that. And then basically they'll play and do transactions for you when you're basically the autonomous agent argument. I think that's going to be a big use case that's going to take place in gaming. So.
Spend too much time and money on gaming. So the whole gaming and AI intersection is fascinating. Now, Joey, a question for you from a venture perspective, right? Is there a kind of project that you haven't seen? Like, let's say we have a bunch of founders or builders here, which we do. What should they be coming and pitching to you about? Saying, okay, I'll build this, and you're going to be really excited about it.
I'm always really bad at answering that question because, at Founders Fund, we're all just about the founder. And then this is a secondary question of like, does the vision that the founder thinks, makes sense?
What if, can an AI replace one of the crypto founders in the future?
Yes. AI CEO. It's coming.
It's coming. Would you invest in that?
I think you'll have AI CTO first. But yeah, I would invest in. That's why. I would invest in a company that had AI team members. Yeah, why not?
I believe it.
Yeah.
So
maybe from my side, yeah, I think so. There's effectively now a room to create the next level of what will become applications, right? Because the layer of applications themselves, right, you being in front of the user, will start to aggregate into and big consumer apps. But those consumer apps will effectively through AI agents, which is programs that use all that, right? Will start transacting, acting, interacting. So the opportunity for founders right now is to start creating AI agents and doing things in real world, on chain, autonomously.
not like the bots that are on Solana right now. No, okay, right. So I think we've digressed a little, and the topic is really verifiability and so data, right? There's a lot of data. I think compute scalability is one thing, data scalability is quite another. And compute scalability is a little bit easier to solve than, let's say, verifying just the sheer amount of data that goes into training a model. And I know that OpenLedger are working on that. How do you sort of make this problem tractable from product and engineering perspective? So what are you verifying? I mean, everything, or are there sort of higher level primitives we can look at? That's a bit more technical, I guess, and that's why I'm asking you.
I mean, I think let's just go through the pipeline. Right, so you have a common crawl, right? This is effectively, we've been crawling the internet for a long time. It's open source, it's available. We effectively need to take it, upload it to decentralized storage, which do scale now and work. And so now you have the base, right? So it's in decentralized storage, everybody can go inspect what it is, how it is. Now, what's happened next is the filtering process, right? So nobody feeds the whole common crawl into a model. There's a lot of crap there, spam, SEO optimization, all kind of stuff. So there's a set of effectively procedures that will run over it to filter it down to data that will be actually used for training. So those procedures need to be available as a source code. You need to be able to say that this outcome data set is indeed a common crawl applied to this function. So if we're running inside TEs, we actually have the certification that these chunks of data are fed in, this is output, here is the certification, we can aggregate them, we can create a
So the cryptography part of this is much more interesting than the crypto part of that? Is that what you're saying?
Isn't it always? Oh, wait.
I think the other,
Right.
I think the other interesting part.
Per token.
Token? Yeah, actually, that's a very interesting idea, right?
I think the other thing that's interesting is that gaming is actually a way in which you can actually reinforce data models, training models in terms of specific rules that you establish. Yeah. So I think the future of many of the games that are out there, they're really doing this for designing levels and determining what's more fun for the player from an economic standpoint. Yeah. But actually you get down to the point where if there's an outcome you want to achieve from a sort of learning model standpoint, you can direct the game to be reinforcing an action through a human interaction through gameplay.
I think that's really cool.
And I think this is something that, it's kind of like people, how do you get self-driving cars? People driving the car the whole time, right? So same thing, but in a virtual way that can scale to billions of people.
Joey, over to you. And then
Yeah, the only thing I would add there is I think there's also some interesting stuff happening with like kind of like self-play of the models to teach them stuff. Like if you look at 6 or 7 years ago, OpenAI published like this like playground where they taught a model to basically do basic computer tasks like playing Minesweeper and playing Solitaire and navigating the web and stuff. I think that sort of stuff is going to come back, especially combined with the current LLM stack that we have today. And so the point about data, I think you can basically generate synthetic data by like iterating across like the kind of self-play reinforcement learning stack combined with the existing LLM stuff that will be quite interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually happening for coding right now. Because
Yeah.
for anything where you can have like a very concrete success criteria, you can just like
so
let the model do.
yeah, this has been a fantastic discussion. I've learned a lot from it. I hope you guys as well. The only answer I didn't get is the names of products that I can use today. Okay, yes, that's fair. Right. Okay, that's fair. Any other products that are usable today in the AI verifiable AI space? Prime Intellectus training the model. Yeah, EXO. Yes, thank you for mentioning EXO and OpenLedger. Yeah, and Sentient. Yeah.
Hyperbolic.
Yes, mention all of my investments. Thank you, Joey. Right. Sorry.
No, I mean I think you guys already mentioned most of them off the top of my head.
Great. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I hope this kept everyone awake. And if I had to poke you for that, then my apologies. But thank you very much. You have a wonderful day.